ballistic missiles, the first ever seen on this planet. Stealth technology developed half a century before B-2 bombers. Flying saucers and UFO Foo Fighters. Did the Nazis have an extraterrestrial edge in the Second World War?
They were doing things that no conventional aircraft could do.
The Allied command really didn't know what they were dealing with.
These weapons nearly changed the course of human history.
Some believe that UFO technology is what sparked Hitler's quest to conquer the world, along with an alien connection that fueled never-before-seen weaponry. But what happened to this knowledge once the war was over?
Apollo 11. 30 seconds.
July 16th, 1969, 9:32 a.m., Cape Canaveral, Florida.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6.
A Saturn V rocket lifts off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Apollo 11, the first lunar landing mission. 4 days later, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin reached the moon.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
But little do most people know, the technology behind this defining moment in history was developed by a Nazi rocket scientist captured at the end of World War II. And 50 years later, a deeper mystery still swirls. Was the technology that brought man to the moon extraterrestrial itself? The story begins in southwest Germany, just before the war.
There's a story that in 1936, in the Black Forest, there was a crash of a UFO. The crashed UFO was taken to Wurzburg Castle, one of the key Third Reich headquarters, and that's where the process of reverse engineering began.
According to some accounts, the Nazi scientists were able to obtain the craft, reverse engineer the technology, and eventually develop rockets, advanced guidance systems, bombers, flying wings, and technology that the world has never seen.
If this incredible story is true, then Hitler's armies may have had an extraterrestrial edge in their battle for world domination. The first clues appeared after the Allied invasion. June 13, 1944, 1 week after the D-Day landings. In the coastal region of Normandy, France, American and British troops are fighting to free Western Europe from the grip of Hitler's Third Reich. The Nazis retaliate by launching an incredible new weapon, V-1 rockets called buzz bombs, aimed for England.
On D-Day, the Allies landed somewhat unexpectedly and more successfully than the Germans had anticipated, and the launching of the V-1 was to get revenge on them for this invasion and try to undermine British morale.
The V-rockets were Germany's first Wunderwaffen, wonder weapons of World War II, and could have been game changers. They were the first, essentially, guided missiles of modern warfare.
Effectively, the V-1 just flew, a lot of the time, over London. And then when the fuel ran out, the thing would plummet to the earth and explode. And I remember my grandparents, who lived in London, telling me about this. you were all right as long as you heard the engine. But the moment the engine stopped, there was terror, and people just dived for cover.
Three months later, in German-occupied Holland, the Nazis unleash an even more powerful weapon.
The V2 was effectively a long-range ballistic missile. It was a rocket. It traveled to the very fringe of space. There was no warning, no possible defense against it.
Nor any logical explanation for the Germans developing such advanced weaponry seemingly out of thin air. There were rockets at the time. In 1937, after 10 years of test flights, American engineer Robert Goddard fired a liquid-fueled A-8 to an altitude of 9,000 feet, a record-setting achievement. But as cutting-edge as it was, Goddard's rocket could only travel up and down, primitive in contrast to the V-1 and V-2, which soared over long distances, their routes programmed into an onboard